All right. It's the top of the hour, so I guess I'll open up. I was just going back and forth with Craig of the two of us that started this AMAing when I got it scheduled. Since the first question was just a generic, what is an SRE, please? And I went ahead and answered that, tried to provide some links down below. Happy to try to talk in more detail if anybody wants to verbalize anything, but I put a good beginning opening chapter of the SRE workbook from Google. And then for the video inclined, there's also some great answers from Google on that YouTube channel link where there's a couple of videos where they describe a lot of practices of DevOps too. So does anybody have a question they want to ask on top of that first one, or should we move on to Suri's?
Hey, I have a question. This is Victor, the product manager, David. And in regards to SREs, I know in the past we didn't have
just with the rules. We do that little.
Hello. Hey, Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I think that might have been, I don't know, Francis was unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Keep going.
Yeah, no, my question is just, is it just because we've grown as an organization, so we just eventually needed SREs, or was there, I recall maybe like we had a different philosophy in the past? So I wanted to know if you had any of that historical background and just curious, like how we operate as a company, what's our philosophy on the SRE model, for example. So curious about that.
Sure. I think I'll go ahead and answer that. I don't know if Jerry's on too from the director level, but I can go ahead and start it. I've been here, just for clarity, about 10 months now. So I came on as the manager on the SRE team right when we decided to switch it to the being titled by SRE team. And I think some of that, there are a couple of different factors. One was actually the job market, that this is a title and a position that I think makes difference to people and what you do for DevOps practices and supporting a production environment. And I think it also was, to answer your question, alignment of where we wanted to go and to take what was the production team and start to shift it towards more SRE-like practices. Let's start to get the people who run GitLab.com more engaged with the engineering teams. And that's, again, what we're starting to grow towards in terms of, if you look at our KRs this quarter, and starting to work more tightly with the CI/CD team as the first start of this. So, without going into too much detail on those first links that I talk about, that I think it's also aspirational in the direction we'd like to move what the production team was towards a tighter engagement with engineering and working towards some of those best practices, both from a DevOps point of view and from an SRE point of view. For people that read some of those links and things, you see a lot of what people talk about it for the object-oriented people, that SRE is an instantiation of a bunch of DevOps practices. And that's, I think, what we're trying to start to do with our teams here.
Thank you. That's a great explanation. Appreciate it.
Since Suri's questions are next, and I'm not sure, I think it sounds like she's still sleeping, I'm going to go ahead and nominate Craig or one of the other SREs to answer some of the next questions, just so that we get some other people to speak up.
Sure. Okay, so any good books lately? So it doesn't really specify technical or non. So I'm going to go with what I think is the more interesting one and go with the non. And I've recently been tackling the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I got most of the way through it when he passed away, and before Brandon Sanderson started taking over and finishing the series. It's a 14-book series, I think, if people have heard of it. So I decided that since the series has since been finished by another author, picked up his notes and whatnot. So I just started doing that. So I'm only like partway through the first book, The Eye of the World, but I've read 12 of them so far previously. And so it's like, have I read and planning to read? So it's a mix. And Dream Vacation, I enjoy this. This changes over time, but I would say slow travel is one of my big ones. And so lately I've been dreaming about slow travel through Europe in like beautiful summer months and spending days on end camped out like outside of awesome little pubs and cafes and wandering around. I really love old European architecture, so yeah, that would probably be my number one. Anybody else on the team want to take a stab at any of those?
Sure. I'll jump in. I'm going to do kind of what you did. I'll say that recently I've been reading Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie, and I just moved into the second book in that series. It's pretty good. It's sci-fi. I read a lot of science fiction, so that's something I really enjoy. And then I've actually been trying to get through a book that is more technical. This is the Prometheus Up and Running book. We use Prometheus a lot, so I haven't used that in the past in my career, so I've been trying to get to know it better and make my way through that book slowly. So those are the two books I've kind of been spending my time with recently. And then I'll go ahead and take a stab at Dream Vacation. I want to go back to Scotland. I've been there before, and I feel like I didn't get enough time there, but that's why it's a dream vacation, right? Maybe one day. Let's see.
Yeah, I was gonna check. Is Jason on? Do you want to verbalize your question or? Just browsing through people. Not sure I see him. So I was going to see if John Northrop or Jarv wanted to speak up in answering the question about some of the eventual migration to Kubernetes questions.
Sure, I can help answer that. Currently, the plan is to start looking at registry first. It's our only stateless service that we have. All of the other services have some dependency on NFS, and all of them have some dependency on the database except for registry. Registry only interacts with the API. It's probably our best candidate. Some of our monitoring infrastructure would also be good candidates, such as Prometheus, Alert Manager, our logging infrastructure, because we have a bunch of beats that publish to Elastic Cloud. Those would also be good for Kubernetes, but I think we want to start off with one of the GitLab services. Registry is probably the best candidate. In the delivery team, we're talking about this, and we're going to be bringing in some people from the SRE teams as well. It's likely going to happen first on Canary. We have a registry Canary, and the way that works is that we have whitelisted paths so that if you publish to the registry under certain paths, then you use the Canary nodes, and this would be a good opportunity for us just to convert those to Kubernetes. It would limit like what it's, what paths are being used for it, and allow us to kind of gradually get it in. What pain points would you like to have more knowledge or experience with? I would say everything about Kubernetes for the team. I mean, we're not really running Kubernetes in production right now. We're using Kubernetes for our runners in some cases, and those are installed under GKE, and I think we're probably going to be using GKE for Kubernetes when we deploy it. I think a lot of us have been reading up on Kubernetes. I think some people have had experience in their prior jobs, but we don't really have any experience running it in production here. Next question is, how do you measure your uptime? And more importantly, how do you maintain it? That's a good question. Does anyone else want to take this?
I can speak a little bit to it. At the moment, uptime is one of those things that we don't have a very clear definition of it, but the thing that we use more than anything else is Pingdom. And Pingdom's a third-party service, and they have servers all over the world, and they ping a whole bunch of our endpoints every minute, every few seconds from these servers all around the world. And they keep a very good sort of record of exactly, when those pings go through and when they don't. And for most of the time when we want to report on our uptime, we get it from Pingdom, and that's also public information. So I can find the URL and put it into the working doc. But it normally hovers around 99.95%. which is sort of our target. I don't know what it's been over the last few days. We had 2 outages in the last week or so that have been about 2 minutes. 99.95% gives you about 5 minutes a week. So we might be a little bit under now. I'm not actually sure. Where is the second part of that question?
How do you maintain the uptime was the second part, Andrew.
How do you maintain the uptime? Well, that's kind of like the really hard bit, I think. I mean, there's obviously a lot of things. For me personally, I think one of the really important things is that we monitor things really well and that we don't get surprised by, visiting gitlab.com and finding 500 errors, and that we get full warning of errors so that we can respond to them before they take down the site. And so, at least in my sort of view of the world, it's very much about observability and metrics and warnings and alerts that tell us that things are going wrong so we can fix them before they do go wrong. But obviously, it's also about sort of, running a really good operation and having a really sort of well-run cluster and not overloading the servers and preventing abuse, because a lot of the downtime that we see is because of people doing bad things, whether that's by mistake or deliberately, and blocking that and preventing that from happening, and fixing the product in ways that people don't make mistakes that bring down the site. So sometimes people do things that they think is acceptable, and just because of the way that GitLab.com, or at least GitLab, the product, is architected, it might be much more sensitive than they would expect. So a classic example of this is people who build Android applications, and they want to check whether there's a new version of the application. And so they get the Android application to basically poll GitLab. And so we have all these mobile phones all around the world polling GitLab, which shouldn't be a bad thing, but unfortunately for us, it is. And so we sometimes have to block those kind of requests because they generate lots and lots of giddily requests and put pressure on our servers, where maybe the person that did that wasn't expecting it to be such a bad thing. So one of the other things that we need to do is push back on product and try get those things fixed as well.
You know that our .com database is 3 terabytes.
Yeah.
Less. I was thinking we were like 1.5 or something, but we are 3.
We're getting rid of it. Yeah, we started 2 minutes. That's better.
Hey, Marin, you're unmuted there, buddy.
Oh, I'm sorry. We are in the co-working space, so sorry.
I thought you were adding to the conversation, man.
Yeah, so we are in the Netherlands co-working, so we are kind of discussing it here. I'm sorry.
Cool. Does that answer your question? Does anyone else have anything else to add? Yeah.
I'd like to add to the first point, that is that I've been working with product right now to define error budgets. And this is a different look at uptime. Rather than calculating actual time as a metric, we'll attempt to start generating an error rate and aggregating that count. There may be some translation to time later, but you have more of an aggregate-based accounting system that measures more the end user's experience as opposed to how long we were actually down a specific endpoint. So it's something we're going to begin working with product on, which we will roll in. We leave the target from Josh, although I saw yesterday during the company call, he is interim for monitoring right now. So we'll see who picks up the torch with Henry Bircher on their expectation for this, I believe, is 11:10. So we'll see if that incident.
So I think next question from Elsha is how do we back up GitLab.com daily incremental specific times? So there's a couple different aspects to that. The volumes underlying all of our VM instances get snapshotted, I believe, every 30 minutes, every hour, something like that, and retained for, I remember, 30 days. So somebody feel free to correct me on that. And then we also have database backups that get stored. We use something called WAL-G, which is almost as much as I know about it. So I don't know if we got any DVREs on the call. That does streaming backups to object storage. And yeah, the disk snapshots comprise both instance, like cloud instance root volumes and the data volumes for our Gitterly store. That's the most basic level. I mean, does anybody want to chime in with more context, or are there any more questions around that?
I can add a few things. One is that we not only test backup, but we actually test restoring, which is really important to make sure that we can restore from backup. We have a project that has all of the CI jobs that do that. I can point you to one of them as an example, which is the snapshots for disks. I'll put that, but you can see all of them under the project. I guess this is internal only, but because this repository is mirrored on GitLab.com, but our actual pipelines themselves run on the internal operations instance. And the reason why is because we don't want to depend on the uptime of GitLab.com for backups, obviously. Like if backups, or if there's a problem with the GitLab.com API, we still want to run backups. So we do it on our private instance, but the code is mirrored publicly in the GitLab Restore project. Next question is, how big is GitLab.com? So I think Northrop added a bunch of stats here, 3.5 million users, 8.4 million repos. I clarified some things here. I believe if you sum up everything, we probably have over 3 petabytes of storage if you include all of the object storage. 500 terabytes is Git. Actually, I think it's closer to 300 terabytes. Northrop, why did you write 500 terabytes there? Maybe I'm not including something.
So I was including the Git, the shared storage, the pages, like all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of pages. That's actually a really good point. So all of, like, I guess all of the storage on disk, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 500 terabytes of just the stuff on disk. That includes pages, which is not that much, but it's like a significant chunk of it. And then we have repositories, which is by far the most that we store on disk. And then we have a lot of data on object storage. Registry alone is 2 petabytes. And I think next after that is artifacts. There's a dashboard there that I included for just all of our storage on object storage in GCP. Andrew put a nice link to the vanity dashboard, which is a really good reference. I think some of those panels are internal only. I noticed, Andrew, that I tried to load this for GitLab.com, the dashboard, the public dashboard, and not all of them loaded. I don't know if...
Yeah, it connects to Elasticsearch, and for security reasons, we won't connect that to the public dashboard.
Yeah, so the database dashboards, I have a link under the Postgres that shows you the vanity metric for the database size, and that's public, so people who aren't internal can view that. Sid asks, can he tweak GitLab 3? I don't know. I guess so. I mean, this is something that we're actively looking to try to improve, because right now we don't have good retention policies for things like the registry, and we need to bring this under control.
Yeah, registry in particular is, I think, one of our bigger issues with to my knowledge, and we may have fixed this already, but there's no ability to clean up and remove images out of the registry. It's at this point it's append only storage. So that's one thing that, from the SRE perspective, I know that I've been looking forward to is the ability to chop down some of our footprint for registry.
It's just surpassed a petabyte, the registry.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it on that object storage dashboard I've linked to, which is also public for anyone else who wants to take a peek. And yeah, that has everything except for artifacts, which we're in the process of moving from S3 to GCS. Eric has the next question, and I'm really curious about this. This is a really good question because I would love to know this as well. You know, orders of magnitude from the next largest instance. This could be something that we aren't able to share publicly. I don't know, but that would be really nice to know.
Yeah, and I think we're just discussing there. I asked, and we were going to ask Stan, and it looks like Andrew's typing some. Maybe Andrew has seen some large ones. I guess in the meantime, we'll move on for Lyle by way of Lee. Lyle, are you on? Did you want to verbalize that or just have us walk through some of those answers?
Yeah, I'm here. We were just kind of wondering sort of what, specifically like our nodes on .com, like what size are they? How much headroom do we think they have? And then kind of, I see that somebody linked the handbook in PDF for the fleet walkthrough. And then we were kind of just wondering about some statistics. So it's sort of in the same vein as Eric's question, sort of as we plan out large customers, what things can we learn from .com?
I think the biggest issue at the moment is the way the architecture between GitLab.com and many of our clients is very different. So GitLab.com, basically to get from a web page to Git, there's no NFS involved anymore. But the sort of reference architecture that we tell our clients to use still has NFS. And so there's a lot of different requirements that kind of no longer make sense, or at least the architectures are very different. And that's obviously something that's being addressed at the moment. You know, I think we need to move some of our bigger clients towards like Giddily nodes and obviously no NFS, but that doesn't make sense for a small setup. And at the same time, we also need a proper test bed for testing an NFS setup like many of our clients use, which is something I believe is being worked on. So it's kind of difficult to kind of take GitLab.com and apply it directly to clients because it's such a different architecture now. I don't know if anyone's got anything else they want to add to that.
I was just going to add that I threw in a link on the third bullet point there, and Lyle already knows about it. There is an issue out there to update the reference architecture that has an ask open for SRE input on that. So we'll be contributing to that soon.
But I think with the nodes, why are the nodes the size they are? I think it's kind of like what we're looking for is an ideal sort of efficiency. So the cheapest node that's the most powerful, and then we tend to sort of select a node and then we tend to scale them up horizontally. And then every now and again, what's a good idea, but I don't think we've done it in a while, is to actually look at what GCP offers and see if there's a better machine that will give you better bang for the buck. But as far as I know, we haven't done that since we've moved to GCP. But that's kind of the ideal path. Really at the moment, when we find that our web nodes or our API nodes are starting to take strain, we might add some more. And so it's kind of like a sort of natural process of kind of scaling it out that way.
I would also, I'd also want to add to what Andrew just said. Sometimes the dimensions aren't always straightforward. For example, on our storage nodes, the way that GCP allocates IOPS is that it's by the number of cores for SSD. For regular disks, they do it by the disk size. So for places where we rely on SSD, we actually are a bit over provisioned just because just the way that they allocate IOPS on the for our SSD disks is by the number of cores. So we have like more CPU than we need on some nodes. It isn't always as straightforward as CPU and memory. But I would say in general, for the front end fleet, we are a bit over provisioned because we are provisioned for what we need at peak traffic, and we don't have any dynamic auto scaling.
And I'd add, since you just mentioned auto scaling, that's one of the things we would love to get out of moving to a containerized environment. Of once we get to GKE, it should enable us to be able to do a lot better job with auto scaling. I think Ben's called that out before too. So that's something we're looking forward to. Matt, were you on, and did you want to verbalize your question about the SRE title, or? Okay, I'll just go ahead and answer. I mean, you see the answer is already there. Everybody was production engineers beforehand, but that was a title change that happened about last May. We'll move on to Rachel. Did you want to ask your question real quick?
Hi, I'd like to know what the 3 highest priorities are for the SREs at the moment.
I'm looking to see if Jerry's on. I guess maybe not. Trying to think about that. I think at the moment we're finishing out, and you know about it, Geo with DR. To me, that's always been one of the highest priorities, because making sure you have at least even a minimal DR plan is very important. After that, going to have to stare at the other managers and at Andrew and figure out what we're doing. I think the other one that has risen very recently is cloud spend, and understanding cloud spend. And then for third, I think, I'd have to go look at, we've got a handful of other things that are probably all tied for third. But if I had to call it the top 2 right now, those would be the top 2.
I'll mention as well that all OKRs are up in public. You should be able to see priorities and it should be dictated at least somewhat by those. So I'll share the ethics in about you.
Anthony, small thing, but your audio is really distorted.
Daniel, would you like to verbalize yours?
Sure, thanks. So we were looking through an issue today, and I noticed that some of the CI infrastructure is on Rackspace, and I was wondering, why don't we have all the infrastructure on GCP, as I would imagine that there would be some benefits like speed from having it all in one place, and then we can use the redundancy that they have built in instead of having different vendors. Thank you.
It is actually on Rackspace, Daniel. It's managed. The accounts is managed. Sorry, it's on Google Cloud. It's the accounts is managed by Rackspace. So Rackspace is basically our vendor into, I forgot what the proper term is, but they basically they manage our Google account for us. So we don't have Rackspace Cloud resources. All of our resources that Rackspace manage are on Google Cloud, but we just so happen to get the bill from Rackspace.
And why is that? Why don't we manage the GCP stuff ourselves directly?
I'm not sure. There are economical reasons, which I'm not sure if we're supposed to talk about on public calls. Maybe we can. I'm not sure. Someone else can confirm that. But there are. It's cheaper for us effectively, and we also get Rackspace support, which is very good.
I mean, to clarify, we manage the GCP resources, right? So we're not asking Rackspace to manage them for us. We directly manage the resources, the compute instances, and the deployment and running thereof, right? We're just using Rackspace as a billing partner for our billing and usage of the Google Compute space.
Yep, and it's exactly right, Andrew. We got a better deal, save some money to going to Rackspace.
Okay, and we're right at the bottom of the hour. I know we don't have a company call, but trying to respect people's time. Thanks, and Craig and I had started talking with this with Ashton. We'll try to get some more scheduled because I know there are other questions people would love to ask. So, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.